13.7 million Americans will lose their health care coverage. And we have to ask ourselves, what's the excuse of making these kind of cuts? And the justification is always seems to be, oh, it's because some people scam the system. Some people abuse the system. But I find it interesting that the people who are saying that people are abusing the system are the same people that are abusing the power that the American people gave them. A country is no country if it can't provide the safety and security needed for its people to live well. But that seems to be coming to an end now, and our country is becoming unrecognizable. As we speak, our nation is trying to dismantle the healthcare system that millions of people rely on in the United States of America. We have to ask ourselves, is this what it takes to be a great country? If a great country would take the healthcare away from millions of its own citizens, we have to ask ourselves, is this what makes a nation great? By gutting the healthcare system and taking it away from millions of our own citizens, do we make ourselves stronger or do we make ourselves weaker? Do we make ourselves more stable or do we make ourselves more secure? Because the answer to this question is obvious. We are less secure, we are less stable, we are less safe. And whether we agree or not, we have to accept the fact that these cuts will cause the deaths of many Americans. And honestly, I don't know what happens to this nation if this actually passes. With everything else that's happening and every decision that's being made to absolutely crush the working poor of our country.
They can't even afford rent, let alone covering health care for themselves or their children. But do you see what they're doing? They're cutting health care for 13.7 million Americans, the largest cut to health care in U.S. history, to give tax cuts to billionaires and to big corporations. This is your priority. Live with it. Defend it. Speak about why it is you are doing this. Yes. Because that is the consequence of your actions. Donald Trump told you to do it? Or is this what your constituent asked for?
This is a time to get angry. This is a time to get mad because the things that are important to us as Americans that we rely on to keep us healthy and keep us safe are being taken. They're being taken for no other reason but to fund tax cuts that will only benefit the richest Americans in this country. It's time to be mad and it's time to stand up because at some point we have to say enough is enough. And this feels like we're getting just right up to that moment. Right up to that moment where people cannot take this anymore. Because what are we to say? What are we to say when people are getting thrown out on the street? What are we to say when people who are getting cancer can't be treated? What are we to say when people can't feed their kids? Just say, well, you should have tried harder. If we are the greatest country in the United States, then it is on us to be able to prove that we are the greatest country in the United States. That is on us, our nation, our politicians, our leaders, the benefactors of this country. It is on them to prove America's greatness. But by stealing from the poorest among us, by putting the most vulnerable among us into absolute peril is not the way to do that. Be mad and be angry because this is the moment to do so. 13.7 million Americans will lose their health care coverage. And we have to ask ourselves, what's the excuse of making these kind of cuts? And the justification is always seems to be, oh, it's because some people scam the system. Some people abuse the system. But I find it interesting that the people who are saying that people are abusing the system are the same people that are abusing the power that the American people gave them. Abuse and corruption run rampant in our government and in our nation. It has not been addressed. It is allowed to roam free. Our country has become a leviathan that's devouring itself, and it has to be put down. This has to stop. The American people are not toys, they're not pawns, they're not objects that can be moved around for political gain and maneuver. That's not what the American people are for. We're individuals with lives who live on the freest country on the planet, while at the same time, what makes this country the freest country on the planet is being hollowed out and reserved for only the wealthiest Americans. If you have anything to say, you have to be incredibly careful because the idea of the First Amendment and freedom of speech has pretty much just come symbolic at this point. With a leader who's a dictator in every way except the name, our country is about to fall because the American people are giving up. They're not rising up, and hopefully at some point they will. But as of right now, they are just giving up and rolling over. These things will be taken from us. because it's an opportunity for profit to be made. Because we are not a nation anymore, we are a business, and profits are worshipped. And dismantling the healthcare of over 13 million Americans simply to fund tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans is just another sign that America is at its end. Our nation has been broken and its people are giving up. Rise up and let your voice be heard. Protest, call someone, write a letter, do what you have to do, confront people, because this is the only way that this can happen at this point. If the elites would separate themselves from the American people, then the American people have to go to the elites. These people have lived their entire lives knowing no consequences to the actions and the harms that they've done on the American people, and that has to come to an end soon. A reality has to come to the machinations of the wealthy. It has to. It has to stop it. For the sake of the American people, for the sake of everything that this nation purports itself to stand for, this has to stop. What sane person who would call themselves a human being would be okay with the insane tax cuts, the loss of housing, the loss of food benefits, and now the loss of health care? You have completely dehumanized an entire class of Americans, the working class, the poor class. They are Americans just as much as you are, although they may not make as much. They still live lives, they still have families, and to penalize them and eventually move to criminalize them is an absolute failure on our country.
There are not even any Republicans left in this hearing. They all left because they don't even want to defend this. But meanwhile, the speaker is rushing to the floor to pass a budget reconciliation to screw America by passing the biggest tax cut in history on the backs of the American people. WTF? Who's in charge?
This is a good question to ask. Who is in charge and who is leading this charge against the American people? Because is it the Republicans? Is it the GOP? Is it Donald Trump? Who is actually in charge of this country? Because while Trump is away rubbing shoulders with the oil rich, the American people are still here having to deal with the fact that they're about to lose their health care. Where is the representative of the people, and are the people okay with this? The longer this goes on, the more I realize that America will never come together again. America will never be able to fix itself, and the acceleration of this country's demise has quickly hastened. Because there is no debate, there is no discussion, there is simply obey. And obey is exactly what these policymakers are doing. Though I do not see in any way how this can possibly benefit a politician, because the constituency of many of these Republicans are on Medicare, are on Medicaid, use social housing, use food benefits. All these things, who represents its people supposedly is about to take away all those things from their very own constituents. What people does this government serve at this point? That's what we have to ask ourselves. What people do they serve? Because it isn't normal working people. Only profit is made off of our back, while at the same time, the future of Americans is moving past the depression into something far worse. Destruction. It's the only way that this can possibly end, is in a kind of destruction. I used to ask myself if America will be around in the next 50 or 100 years, but at this point, I don't know if it'll be around in 10 years. These tax hikes, these cuts, they hurt us so much, all of us. Even if they don't affect you now, they're going to affect people in your orbit, people who you know, people who you love, your mothers, fathers, grandparents, children. It'll affect everybody. But at the same time, the callousness of the supporters of this bill shows a complete and utter lack for any kind of empathy or humanity. How can we come together as a people? Are we even a people anymore? We're the disunited states of America now, because there's nothing that truly unites us. But anyway, this is Large Men Abroad. Thank you for stopping by. Hey everybody, I wanted to stop and take a moment to thank all of you who supported us so far as we've got this channel to grow to almost 50,000 subscribers. I especially want to thank those who gave to the channel during this big transition period of us bringing this child into the world. And I do want to say that, yes, our child is happy and healthy, and we're really excited for the next steps forward. And again, at some point, we'll be able to actually put him on camera, just not yet. But again, thank you everyone for everything that you've done. And as we continue to grow in this channel, I'd like to invite some of you to think about becoming members. That way we can actually communicate, because I have a lot of complaints from people who I have a hard time communicating with. And it's simply because we're getting to the point where there's just so many comments that it's difficult for me to actually respond to all of them. And really the best way to make sure that I can do that, if that's what you want to do, is through a donation, a super thanks. You can put a question on there, or you can go ahead and just become a member. So again, I want to thank everybody for your support and kind of this ride that we're on together. Hopefully we can see some change in the world that's coming, because we're all in this together at this point. So thank you and have a good day.